This is a long-term review of the DualShock 4 controller. This is about after 5 years of use. This is a video about the physical appearance and how it feels and how visually it looks, not necessarily the gameplay. Let's talk about the buttons and stuff, and let's see what you can expect from usage. So the face buttons, X, square, triangle, circle, are still tactile. It's not too mushy. This will get mushier over time, but as of these buttons right here, they do work. They do have full press and they will bottom out. Your options and share button are still the same. After years of use, it does feel a bit more firm. It's likely to get stuck in the future if things fall into the button. The touchpad still works. It doesn't feel too loose. You can hear the clicks. And you can see some scuffing or some prints from use. Now the analog sticks or the thumbsticks still click well, R3, L3. No stick drift issues. I've used this controller mostly for fighting games, so this is not mostly used at all. But when I do play other games like first player games, I do use these. But as you can see, it does go back, spring back into center. No stick drift issues and works very solid. The material on top hasn't really worn out, but you can tell it's a little glossy, which will become more glossy over time with your finger oils. PlayStation button still works, but this battery is dead right now. I need to charge it. D-pad is the most important part of this controller. So the DualShock 4 controller, I feel like, has one of the best D-pads in all controllers, especially for fighting games. It's very precise. It is a membrane style D-pad. It will get more mushier over time. You can probably hear the mushiness, but it does go down. Now the concern is that when it gets more mushier, it's likely that when you press one button or one direction, it might actuate another direction because there's one whole membrane piece underneath. I haven't need to replace the membrane on this particular controller, but on other previous DualShock 4s, I have had to replace the membrane underneath because it gets worn out. Let's talk about the triggers, or R1, R2. As you can see, it still has the coating and like the texture on it. Still sounds good, no issues. And it still has resistance. Now, if you look on the light bar, again, this is dead, it's not turned on. The biggest pain point of the PlayStation 4 controllers or DualShock 4s is the micro USB port, which is what this uses. You can see there is some deformity right here on the top. This comes after constant use of plugging in and out. It is not secure. Micro USB is probably not the best choice for this controller, but at the time, this is what it came with. So beware, this will get loose, and it's still loose right now. If I plug something in, I can wiggle it, and it can lead to disconnections if you are tethered, wired, or if you're trying to charge. And this port for the headphone jack, I've only used this a couple of times. And I also use something called a back pedal or a back controller where you can attach extra buttons on your controller. This is a separate piece that plugs into the back, and it works, clicks in, but this is separate, so we're not reviewing this. But the ports are fine. The coating on the PS4 controller, as you can see, this material is pretty durable. It is very light, this controller overall. So when you drop this controller, which I have a couple of times, you might hear something shake. Right now it's mostly the buttons, but don't be surprised if you hear more like rattling inside because maybe the spring on the R1, R2, R3, or R1, R2, L1, R2 might get loose, and the PCB might get loose. But you can see the texturized grip right here is still here. It's still very strong. It will attract a lot of finger oils. But overall, this controller, after 5 years of use, has done the job, particularly in fighting games. Play Tekken, for example, and it's done a really good job of being very precise for the most part. And it's a perfect controller. It has more of a compact feel. The durability does stand the test on time, although beware of the D-pad.